Okay.
It's on the page, right?
Yep. Yep. Let's see here.
I just shared it to mine.
Sure, they're viral fast. If I can find it.
Apparently, the Women's World Cup is having VAR drama also. But it's not all that interesting. And then Mexico thinks they won a World Cup after beating Cuba. One team is Cuba.
Well. Okay. Well, let me share it. Share. I think I got it. Share it to your timeline. Okay.
Yeah, you shared it. Continue watching this video on TV. No, what the hell? Yeah, hey Shannon, share the video.
We'll be lucky if he doesn't walk out in the middle of it.
What the hell? What's going on here?
And he probably didn't even check his phone. I texted him, but
Probably asleep or something.
of course. I think I don't think we're gonna have really that many views at all because I don't know. Just fun to the last minute. Okay.
I haven't had a show in a while, so,
Mm-hmm. Okay, try to 10 after, so I guess we'll just wait on Richard to get on, but of course,
Yeah.
Richard.
We are live.
Alright, even though no one else is watching him, I'll go ahead and get started. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, appreciate y'all joining us this evening. As always, Sean Selez here with Raw Villarreal. Richard, hopefully will be joining us soon online and contributing. He couldn't be here in person, had some stuff come up. But it has been a while. We haven't come to you live with the show since our anniversary show in March. And since then, there's been a lot of soccer. Quite frankly, between now and then, life has happened. Been a lot. We've been crazy busy, so we apologize for not having a show. If you're watching on playback, which I know most of you watch it afterwards, the 4 topics up on the board. We're going to start off by talking just a little bit about the Women's World Cup. We will then talk about a lot of different tournaments going on. One I didn't even list on here, but we haven't been on since the Champions League was over. So we'll talk about Champions League. We'll talk about a lot of international cups like Copa America, the Gold Cup, a lot of things going on there. And then number 3, we'll talk about Liga MX, which, believe it or not, is going to be starting a month from now. Liga MX going to be starting up again. We'll talk about MLS and what's going on there. And then finally, we'll wrap things up by talking about your Dynamo and the U.S. Open Cup, which is going on. Will continue on Tuesday. So they'll be doing that again. So Good to be back with y'all. And like I said, we'll talk soccer, so y'all want to contribute to something that's not on that list that you want us to talk about and get our opinion on that's soccer related. Go ahead and post it on there, and we'd like to hear about it. So, yeah, let's jump right in. And I guess the big thing for us, I guess we're admittedly not the biggest fan of the women's game, but you got to pay attention when it's World Cup time. And we've just started off with that. We're only 2 out of 3 group stage wins in. So far, so good for USA. Has anything really stood out to you now this tournament's kicked off, and your thoughts on the start of the Women's World Cup in France?
It kind of basically picked up where it left off. USA obviously dominating the teams that are in their little group. You have Argentina finally getting 1 point after, I think this was the first time they ever got a point in a World Cup with a tie against Korea, I believe. But I think a lot of the teams have stepped up now that a lot of women's teams started to become like club teams. Like in France, PSG has women's teams now, and I think it's helped a lot. But I see it basically picking up where it left off, USA dominating the Women's World Cup. But there's a few teams that are up for grabs also that can take it, so it just depends.
How much do we call it dominance, or how much do we call it the other team didn't belong, in your opinion, about the 13-0 trouncing that USA did of poor Thailand the other day in the opening match? How much of that do you think was USA? Is USA that good, or is Thailand that bad? Which one would you say?
I don't think Thailand really meets the expectations of like a soccer team for women like the USA, because USA is up there, and then when you play a team like Thailand, not saying that they're not talented, yeah they are, but you're going against somebody who just won the last World Cup, so I would go with USA winning that 13-0. That's pretty good, but I don't like that they're trying to make such a big deal out of it. Like, it's soccer, let them play, let the girls play, celebrate. Record. And I was curious. I think it's about half that is what the men's like high was. I forgot they obviously saying it is the all-time most scored in a World Cup game, but I think you can't compare the two. They're different games, different stories. This is a smaller tournament. I look at this as 2 less groups. It's not as many teams in there. They go right ahead to a round of 16 instead of having that 32 knockout. So interesting. However, though, I think soccer culture is built, as you said, from the ground up. You mentioned some of the women's club teams having more taken off. But like I said, look at the teams that are probably going to advance as of right now. In Group A, France, Norway. Group B, Germany, probably Spain, Italy, Brazil, England, Japan, United States, Sweden, Netherlands, Canada. Pretty much the teams that you're used to hearing in the men's side, with a few exceptions, obviously. There's not like some shocker all of a sudden, this country's not a soccer country. Yeah.
Being up there. So, and I think the USA came back. I think what we really saw more realistically is what they did against Chile. They won 3-0. Dominant 3-0, still dominant in soccer. It's still very good, but that's realistic. I'm really curious how they'll do in their last group stage game, because Sweden also defeated the same 2 teams, and so they're going to finally play someone who is 2-0 like them. And that game is coming up in a few days because they're now starting their final group stage games. All right, with that in mind, let's move on. Speaking of international game, there's a lot of different ones that some I just want to mention, some want to get your opinions on. The first one's really just a mention, and let me know if this really stood out to you. Relatively minor tournament in terms of what it does, but I found it interesting. UEFA this year is an off year. It's not their official. It's not the European Championship on the international level. It's what we're doing in the Western Hemisphere. But they did have the UEFA Nations Cup, and I found it interesting to me. The other day I saw that Portugal defeated the Netherlands 1-0. And then the other top 2 finishers were England and Switzerland. And the reason that's notable to me is that means that those 4 are automatically in next year's UEFA European Championship. Anything surprising or significant about that? I mean, like I said, Portugal had a pretty dominant performance throughout that. And, like I said, that was without Ronaldo really being involved really in much of any of that.
Well, we already know Portugal is a very talented team. We've seen them beat France in, I think it was the UEFA tournament that they had, I think, a couple years back. So Portugal is talented. They have young talent coming up. And Portugal is always one of those teams that you look at in the World Cup because they know how to play. So, and then you have somebody like Ronaldo. Yes, he didn't have a lot of playing time and he wasn't able to stand out as much as people expected him to. But you have to also see that it is Ronaldo. I mean, he does play a big coaching role, and it's the Netherlands is talented too. But I mean, Netherlands and Portugal, I would go with Portugal like every day.
What are your thoughts on, I know we kind of mixed, I was really high on this team, and you were, and not that you were down on it, but I know you had other teams you focused on. England, yet again, coming right off a very pretty successful World Cup for them, going pretty deep, and once again going deep in another major tournament. What do you feel like England's outlooks are going forward at the current rate?
They have a very bright future now. They have a lot of young talent that's standing out, and I know they're gonna get called up to the World Cup. And since they're young, they have a long way to go. And we see them doing so good with teams from England. You have them just standing out in Champions League and big tournaments. So when it comes to the World Cup, England is stacking up their team. They're bringing in young talent, and they actually have a chance to probably be the next team to win a World Cup.
Nice. Well, shift gears to the 2 federations that do have major tournaments going on right now. CONMEBOL in South America and CONCACAF in North America have their major titles going on. So let's start in South America, talking about Copa America. That final's going to be playing on July 7th. We just started group stage games. We got 3 groups. Interesting how it's done. Obviously, you have the 10 South American teams are in there, and they invite 2 others from another federation. This year it was from the Asian Federation. One is Qatar because they're the next World Cup host in 2022, and the other one they hosted because they're the next top team is Japan out of the Asian Federation. So they invite 2 others in, which is kind of an interesting play into their tournament. The other 10 are in. Big surprise so far. I guess the big shocker so far, and I see my buddy Oscar tuned in. I don't know if he's still watching or not, but I did see Colombia in the first game. Panic mode for Argentina going down 2-0 right off the bat, or do you think they're going to right the ship?
I think it was just a bad game. Argentina has a lot of young talent that some of those guys are not used to playing on a big stage like this, but I think that they will get 2 wins, 2 major wins that they need to get, but I think they can advance. But they have Colombia in their group. So.
Well, what made that more interesting is that Paraguay and Qatar, who are in their group, tied, giving themselves a 1-1. So right now, as we speak, I know it sounds weird to say, but Argentina is sitting at the bottom of Group B after coming off that loss. Interesting. So one hand, maybe a bad sign for rough start for Argentina. Other saying, like I said, I've always been high on Colombia, and they kind of picked up where they left off. Colombia for me, I've had the same question. I guess I'm starting to have the same question for Colombia that I've had for Argentina and Messi for a long time. Is that can they do it when it counts? I have no doubt Colombia, and just like we're talking about Argentina, Colombia's gotten to the point they've proven, okay, we can get out of group stages, we can go deep in tournaments. Can you win tournaments now? And I think the expectations, if you go all the way back to, really back to Brazil and work your way up to Russia, and now the expectations for Colombia as a team has gone up and up and up. And I'm really wondering if these guys are going to finally break through, this would be a prestigious and great tournament for them to maybe try and do something. Your thoughts on Colombia?
Yeah, Colombia basically picked up where they left off after the World Cup. They're doing good. They look pretty strong. One player that I will point out that he is not the same ever since I think it was 2 World Cups. James is not who he was before. He stood out in 1 World Cup, and now everybody looks at him as the Colombian god when he's not. You have a lot of these younger guys that are way better than him. They're talented. Yes, he does play a big role sometimes, but Colombia's just getting stronger. The talent that they have, they're building it up, which is good to see.
So that's Group B with Colombia getting out to the early lead. Oh, so like I said, only 1 game down, still 2 more to go in group stage. Group A, no surprises there. Brazil comes out with a dominant shutout win over Bolivia, and Peru and Venezuela come to the tie. And that one should be interesting to see. I think Brazil still has to play those other 2 teams. So I think it could be a mix. But I guess the real question is, I think we can safely say Brazil is going to move on. Out of Peru and Venezuela, who do you like better? Do you think to emerge out of that Group A?
I want to say Peru. Peru can actually pull it out. We've seen them in the World Cup, and they actually caught everybody by surprise. They were a lot better than everybody expected. Everybody thought everybody could roll over them, but no, they actually put up a fight. So I think for them to advance out of the group in a tournament like this should even give them more of a reason to throw everything in when it comes to the World Cup. So I'm going with Peru.
Yeah. And then finally, Group C, Uruguay got out to an early lead over Ecuador and then let go. They took the 3 points. Ecuador sitting at 0. As we speak, the final Group Stage 1 game is going on. It is 23 minutes in against Japan and Chile, the defending champions, and they're tied up at 0-0. So we'll keep you updated by the end of this show where they're at. But that's an interesting group. I guess Japan's kind of a wild card. I always thought it'd be hilarious if this backfired and a team that you invited actually ended up, winning your cup. I don't think Japan can go all the distance and win the cup, but I just find it interesting that they let people in like that. So be interesting to watch that group stage game. Like I said, there are games between this cup and we're about to talk about the Gold Cup going on literally every single day between now and July 7th. The finals for both are on July 7th. So interesting alternative. If you're looking for competitive, like I said, guys soccer, everybody called up from those teams, especially with all the domestic leagues around the world not playing, with the exception of the MLS. Everybody's called up for that. So before we move on to the Gold Cup, I did want to mention one thing of note. Do a little rapid fire on your picks here. The I guess you call the equivalent of the U.S. Open. It's obviously a lot more prestigious because it's all of South America. The club version of Copa America, Copa Libertadores, is going on. And in Libertadores, they just finished the group stage finally. 6 huge, it takes forever, long period of time until I hear. So we are now down to a final 16 teams. Now we're into knockouts. It is a 2-leg system, just like you would in your Mexican playoffs. But interesting tournament to be watching because this leg 1 does come up in July 23rd. This is also, I'm sure we'll hit on it when we talk about Liga MX. You talk about the hopes that people have with Tigres and others of getting invited back to this tournament. I would say that, there's the World Cup of clubs that, okay, it is what it is. I would argue that this probably, with the exception of the European Champions League, this would probably be the next prestigious club tournament in the world other than Champions League. So let's look at Copa Libertadores. Let's go down and kind of give me just your quick picks, if you will, on each one. Like I said, these all kick off July 23rd with the first team I'm mentioning starting off at home. And first, from Argentina, we have River Plate. No surprise here. Getting in the final 16 against Cruzeiro. Picking River Plate on this one?
Yeah, I'm going with River Plate.
So I think we're both good with River Plate going on over Cruzeiro, but it could be interesting. We have LDU Quito versus Olimpia. I don't know both these teams as well. I know a little bit about Olimpia, but not as much about Quito.
Yeah, I would go with Olimpia. Olympia's a pretty strong team. They have a lot of talent.
Then we have Nacional versus Internacional, a very interesting matchup.
I'm going with Nacional just because one of Tigres' players plays for them now, and we beat them the last time we were in Libertadores. But they're a pretty stacked team. They're strong.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting matchup. That's a hard one for me to pick, but that's a pretty interesting one to watch, see how that first leg pans out. And then we have Atletico PR versus Boca Juniors. I think I know where you're going on this one.
Yeah, I'm going with Boca.
Boca Juniors all the way on this one. Godoy Cruz versus Palmeiras.
Palmeiras, yeah.
Palmeiras. And then another Argentinian team, San Lorenzo versus Cerro Porteño.
San Lorenzo.
San Lorenzo. And then Emelec versus Flamengo, which I think will be interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Flamingo. Flamingo is just, man, they're a pretty good team.
And Gremio versus Libertad.
I'm going with Gremio. Gremio just because one of Tigres' players, he used to be part of the fan group there, and then he made it up, and now he plays with us. So I'm going with Gremio.
So explain for some people that maybe don't understand. I mean, like I said, I explained that Copa Libertadores is probably the Western Hemisphere version of Champions League in Europe in terms of, I guess, how big it is and prestigious if you're a club team. Which makes sense then why teams in Mexico want to be a part of it. Explain to me, for those who don't know and people who don't know, explain for the audience a little bit, I guess, the history, if you will. Where has there been a precedent? In other words, this is a South American tournament.
Yeah.
Why should they let, and what's the history there of Mexican teams being involved with it?
It was always just because, like, they were always an invited team. They would always invite two teams. It would be the champion and then the runner-up. So they would always invite them, but it was more of like a business strategy because, as you can see, Liga MX is filled with South American players. And now what they're doing is now they're branching out to Europe. But it's because Mexico used to branch out to South America a lot and bring a lot of those players over because to them, it's like you're taking a step up. So it's like you go to Mexico, and from Mexico you can move to, I guess, Europe, or you can the MLS or something like that. So it's just like you're taking steps up because in South America, the pay for players at a professional level isn't so great. It's not all that. So that's why a lot of them, they get offered millions in Mexico, and they're like, yeah, that's a bigger pay than I have before.
Right.
But it's just the history, and for a lot of teams, they love playing there because it's like the atmosphere, everything. It's something that you don't really live anywhere else because soccer to them is everything. Everything they live, breathe, eat soccer. It's a religion.
Yeah, I think it's kind of these weird. I think one of these weird situations you're in where Mexico, although not a part of South America, obviously, Mexico's domestically. I believe if you look at all the numbers, any way you want to cut it, by money, by sponsorships, by just level of play, is considered probably the top, not one of the top leagues in the Americas, even though it's not, in South America. So it's kind of this weird thing where after that, they're all in South America. So it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see what happens with that. I always thought it'd be interesting if they at least invited, if not the champion of the Mexican League, if they opened it up to, if they wanted to be equitable, if it was something like they invited CONCACAF champions, their Champions League, runner-up sort of thing. I get catering specifically to the Mexican League, but that'd be interesting if, for example, Mexican League now plays a champion of champions. Tigres is going to be playing America in July. And then there's the CONCACAF champions, which is open up to any team technically can work their way up and be good enough and win that. It'd be interesting if those two winners were the two. I'd be interested to see how those would determine how do they pick it. But it'd be interesting to do that, which I think will feed into what we're talking about Liga MX next and MLS. I mean, it is a money play, obviously, and it's also a play to get more viewers, more people interested.
What I'd like to see is if we can't get invited back, we're not invited at the moment because Mexico wants to give so many demands, but you're an invited club. You can't do that.
Right.
But if that doesn't happen, what I would like to see is, I guess, create our own knockoff version of Copa Libertadores and bring in all the Mexican teams and collide with MLS. Throw all of them together and treat it the same way, and then you can build it up. And then that'd be better for MLS too, because I mean you're building off of a tournament, you're playing teams.
So basically, I mean, are you proposing basically expand what Champions League is now to where it's a bigger like Libertadores, where it's over a longer period of time, open up to all these different, more and more squads. I mean, I feel like Champions now is so limited. Like for you to get in, you have to meet certain qualifications versus you have a bigger pool if you open it up to. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think in Libertadores, every nation's top team in South America gets in, and so it'd be interesting to see if they do the same thing. I mean, is that what you're basically saying? Is that basically if you let every top team from every CONCACAF, country get in and make it a bigger idea, then it maybe bring the prestige of it up?
Yeah, I would do that. Or if anything, because I believe I did read there was talks of having you would invite Mexico, and they're thinking about bringing in MLS too, which would be crazy for MLS, but that would be pretty interesting.
When you get to that point, it's like I feel like now you're talking about something completely different, because now I feel like it turns into the whole, the Americas. Like I said, a true, almost like we had with the Gold Cup on the international level, but you're having it on the club level of a true champions of the Americas.
Yeah.
Dual federations, set number of teams. And that would be exciting to see, especially in the years like this where we don't have World Cup going on for men, for men's club teams. I think that'd be pretty cool to see, every year after, get some more hype behind it. Like I said, I think there's pros and cons to keeping your individual ones and obviously coming back together. So speaking of which, let's move into Gold Cup. So if we're moving a little north here, we're going to talk about, and we'll come back to leagues working together, because with MLS, Liga MX, I think with their new tournament, they're doing a little bit of that. But first, just as Copa America is going on for South America, we have Copa America that started just slightly behind, but it's going to end, as I said earlier, on July 7th. We've only had a few results so far, with Canada, Mexico, Haiti, and Costa Rica coming out with victories in the first few games. Tonight, Curacao and El Salvador play, and Jamaica and Honduras. And then finally on Tuesday, the rest of Game 1, Panama versus Trinidad and Tobago, and USA and Guyana are the last ones to kick it off in that group play. Any thoughts so far? I know the big thing that I know everyone's ranting and raving about was Mexico 7-0 over I feel like a very ill-equipped Cuban side. But what did you think about these first couple of performances we've seen? Canada, not a surprise there. Costa Rica, perennial favorite. But Mexico rolling 7-0 over Cuba.
It was an interesting game. Mexico did play well. I'm finally seeing a lot of different faces instead of the old faces, because you didn't see Chicharito playing. Giovanni Dos Santos, I believe he didn't even get called up. So they did play well. It was a well-deserved win. But you guys have to keep in mind it was just Cuba. Mm-hmm. It would be different if it was Costa Rica, a team that could actually put up more of a fight, or another team if it was USA, then everybody would be going crazy. Yeah. But it was just Cuba.
We'll talk about that.
It's just Cuba. I mean, it was a well-deserved win. They got the goals that they needed to get. At some point, they did stop celebrating, which I don't see why they did, but I guess they did it out of respect. But Mexico looks like a favorite right now to win this tournament.
Well, I mean, we've been talking about forever, and this is a World Cup. This is the last two World Cups. You get past Mexico, USA, you have Costa Rica, Panama, and then it's everybody else. Yeah. I've seen nothing that indicates I feel otherwise. I think Costa Rica is just as strong as usual. Mexico, I will say this, I agree with you, the one bright spot, if you want to draw anything from that, is you did have guys that aren't typically the ones that are, the ones all over the the score sheet. Some new faces, some younger guys, which I think the Mexican team needs, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Be interested to see in their group. I'd like to see them against. They're in the same group as Canada, so it's probably going to be them and Canada who come out of that group. But it'd be interesting to see them. They play against someone who's, I don't know, more at least physically will be more of a challenge to them. I'm not saying they can beat them or anything like that. On the opposite side, I'll say that I am not, as a fan of USA, I am not optimistic about this tournament. And call me, being pessimistic here, but I think it's being realistic. This USA team has not impressed me. Yes, the coach, being there, has an overall winning record so far, but against who? Tell me, against who? I'm to the same point with these guys that, show me who you are. You guys are big fish in a little pond. You should be beating the crap out of people. Look, I'll be honest with you. I don't know. I'm not that confident USA even in their own group, because I know they have no problem. They should not have any problem with Guyana, but let's not forget that Trinidad and Tobago in their group is the same one that sent them packing to where they couldn't get into the World Cup. And Panama has a history of going back and forth with the USA. I mean, potentially, I could see them getting into a tie situation with Panama, tripping up against some freak thing against Trinidad or against Guyana, and pulling out one win. And they're sitting there with 4 points, praying that they get in because someone else ties or loses. I mean, that's sad that I'm saying about the USA, but that's how little confidence I have in how they're playing right now. I mean, I looked at their lineup. It's a lot of the same old crap. I really want some of these younger guys brought up. They've brought up some, but I just, I'm going to bring up that roster when give me your thoughts, but I am not, I feel much differently about we'll talk briefly about the U20 roster. The young American team I'm very impressed with, but this squad is just, I hate to say it, same old same in a lot of regards.
USA, we went to that USA versus Chile game, and they didn't play the way they should have. You were playing Chile, but Chile is one of those top South American teams that has a roster that's stacked. The USA needs to get rid of some of these guys and bring up some of the younger guys, because the younger guys they're showing you like, hey, bring me up to the big stage, like we can make a difference, but they're just not living up to what they should. There's a big 50-50 chance that they might trip up against one of these teams, and I can tell you right now, Panama will advance out of that group. Is USA the other team to advance out of it or not? That's the thing, and I don't see them being able to pull that off unless they get it together. But one of these teams is gonna eventually come back and show them like, hey, you're not gonna just push us around just because you think you have it in the bag. I just don't have the confidence in the USA right now. They haven't been playing like they have before.
Well, I'll tell you right now. You look at, I'm looking at their lineup, looking at their roster right now, and the one thing they did, I'll give them credit. They finally got some new blood and some young guys back in goalkeeper form between Sean Johnson, Tyler Miller, Zach Steffen. They got some young guys they can work with. Changing the guard there. But, I'm looking at this, the defenders. Omar Gonzalez, I'm sorry, I've seen him already. He doesn't impress me. Nick Lima from the San Jose Earthquakes doesn't impress me. There are some other ones I'm glad. I want to see more of. Matt Miazga plays for Chelsea. Walker's in LAC, I like. But it's just a mixed bag. Midfielders, I'm sorry, and I know you'll go with me on this, I think Michael Bradley no longer needs to be the captain of this team. Why does this guy get a free pass every single tournament? He gets that captain's arms, man, and they royally F up, and 3 other guys get the axe, but here comes Michael Bradley again, and I just don't get it. He's been on the decline in the domestic league. He's going to decline here. Move over for the Christian Pulisic's. Move over for the Christian Roldans. Move over for the Will Traps. These guys, I think, are the core of the midfield going forward, and get some of the new blood in there because there's some exciting ones down there. Likewise, forwards, Josie Altinger, get the Toronto FC guys off this team. Why is it always Michael Bradley and Josie Altidore? Paul Areola is not really impressed me. I mean, what's really underwhelmed me, Zardes from Columbia, from Columbus Crew. I mean, it's the same guys. I like Jordan Morris a little bit. I did like Jonathan Lewis as a young guy, once again a young guy. But their forwards, quite frankly, it sucks compared to other clubs. I mean, you put them up against Mexico right now, the attacking forwards of USA and attacking forwards USA, they don't compare to Mexico. And the sad thing is, there are plenty of American forwards out there. And I don't know why they're getting overlooked, nonstop. So, call me Mr. Negative here because that's what I'm going to be. But my prediction, honestly, is USA scraping into the knockout rounds by 4 group stage wins. Mark my words. They're going to win 1 game, tie 1, lose 1. 4, and get knocked out almost instantly, or maybe go 1 round and knock out at most. They will not make it past the quarters. And that's just the reality of it. I don't see how they're going to do that. Other big things here, like I said, it's the question of the 2 big giants there. The other big question I think always on people's back of minds is, I think out of Costa Rica and Panama, Costa Rica's always been that perennial third who I think has the biggest potential to knock someone off. So the question is, can they actually break through and do it for once?
Yeah.
I think that's Costa Rica. If you're looking for a third team to look for, that would be it.
El Salvador and Honduras are in the same group, right?
They are in the same group, I believe.
Because if they're in the same group, one of them is going to advance out of there.
Yes.
That's going to be very interesting.
And if I had to pick, let me pull up those.
Honduras.
I'm going to pick Honduras out of that. But if we're looking at the groups for Gold Cup, Mexico, Canada, easy wants to go from Group A.
Yeah.
Martinique, Cuba, sorry. You have Costa Rica, Haiti, Bermuda, Nicaragua. Obviously, Costa Rica. Haiti's got the early lead. Unless Nicaragua can do something, I doubt it. I think Haiti will actually advance. Curacao, El Salvador, Honduras, Jamaica. As I said, that group is playing tonight, so no one has played yet.
I would go with
we'll see.
Jamaica and Honduras to go out of that group. I picked Jamaica going at the top and Honduras coming in second.
And then finally, Group D, you have Guyana, Panama, Trinidad, Tobago, USA. Should be USA and Panama, but we'll see if there's a mix, what the mixed bag there is. By the way, back over in Copa America, Chile has already scored it's the 43rd minute, so they're up on Japan 1-0 to start. Eric Pulgar, 41st minute for Chile.
Not bad.
So,
41st.
One brief bright spot I will give, and so I'm not bashing USA completely. I did want to mention back in June, and shout out to Richard for pointing this out, U20 had the U20 World Cup, which I know doesn't get a lot of attention, but it's also a good tournament to watch if you want to see what your country potentially has in store going forward out of your youth. And that final, you have 2 teams that you usually don't hear about, 2 countries rather. Ukraine actually won the U20 World Cup 3-1 over South Korea. The third place game was played against Ecuador, who won 1-0 over Italy. Coincidentally, Ecuador is the team that the USA team lost to in the quarterfinals, and they lost to them 2-1. So it was a good showing for USA U20. They lost to who ultimately became third place. A lot of interesting teams in there. I will say this: when you look at that tournament, I was surprised at the number. There was a couple of not the usual African teams that you expect that were up there. I think it was Mali and a few others that out of nowhere had some, went pretty deep in that tournament. So it's kind of cool to see some young talent from someplace other than Europe or South America. As you say here, the final was played against Ukraine, who doesn't do anything, and South Koreans who continue to build on their success that they've had in previous tournaments, but it's just kind of been a slow grind. Let's get to more back home. Let's keep it over here in North America, and let's talk about Liga MX and MLS. Before we get into Liga MX, the reason I talk about those two together is our last kind of tournament to talk about for now is this this rehashing of a Interliga tournament between the MLS teams and Liga MX. Now, I didn't even know this. You're the one who pointed out to me. This has been done in the past years ago, but now we're bringing it back in a very small version, and kind of a random version. But once again, I think they're testing the water to see how it does. Kind of what you're thinking about. What are your overall feeling about them trying to? Are they forcing this, or do you think there's a lot of actual potential here for a true interliga sort of thing to occur between MLS and Liga MX?
I think it's going to occur, but I think Liga MX and MLS were kind of in the talks because they know they're going to make money out of this both because they always bring Mexican teams over to the U.S. and they have friendlies and stuff here, so they know that there's money to be made. But the way that they did it with the 4 teams from Mexico, 4 teams from USA, it's kind of good because they just didn't pick like 4 random teams from Mexico and 4 random teams from U.S. It's actually 4 teams that actually play well in the United States and they have numbers and they score goals. And same thing in Mexico. So I'm kind of excited for them to bring it back. And recently, what I think is going to happen in the future is MLS is going to start trying to buy players from Mexico, which is good for them because you're buying talent that eventually kind of wants to branch out. Portland Timbers just bought Necaxa's best player. So that's pretty good. And I like that they're bringing it back now. It should be pretty interesting. Dynamo's in it, and they have to face America, so that's going to be a good matchup. We're in it, and we have to play Real Salt Lake, and you also have Cruz Azul playing Chicago. Should be pretty interesting to see Chicago play them. And then you have Tijuana versus LA Galaxy, which they're basically next door neighbors to each other. So
I think very, like you said, very intentional on who they picked. It's also geographical when you look at it. If they picked out MLS teams, they picked 4 teams that represented basically 4. You have a West Coast team. You knew one of the 2 LA teams was going to get picked. You have a Texas team. Either us or Dynamo or Dallas were going to get picked. You have Chicago, Central Midwest, Eastern Conference team. The one that did surprise, I was a little surprised with Real Salt Lake, them getting in there and getting picked, but they're not emerging market. They're one of the older MLS teams, but they're there. Same thing in Mexico. Look, what we always complain about the regional. We talk about this whole idea of Mexico, DF, and Nuevo Leon. Once again, very intentional. Bring Tijuana in, West Coast team, right across from California. Match them against LA. They know going to get fans hyped up. There's people who live in Southern California that are Tijuana fans. There's people who live in Tijuana, Baja, that are probably Galaxy fans because of some of the Mexican players who play there. Same thing with Club America coming here. That's on purpose. Yeah. They know the fan base that the Mexican League period has here. But outside of like Tigres and Rayados, Club America is probably one of the other big followings here. Tigres has a fan base, almost everywhere these days. And Cruz Azul, once again, an historical team, a team that, has been there. So it's not like, like I said, thank God they didn't call on Chivas. That would have been a whole other thing. But very intentional, very geographical. It is a straight-up bracket. It's a straight-up one-shot elimination, 8 legs. This is short and sweet. This kicks off July 23rd and 24th. Yep. On the 23rd, on that side, Chicago and Cruz Azul will play. Galaxy and Tijuana will play. The winners play each other.
Yeah, all games are in the U.S. also.
All in the U.S. Yep. Dynamo, Club America play, and Real Salt Lake and Tigres play. Winners play each other. And then obviously the winners from the UNC. So we right away after the 24th, we're down to a Final 4, and then bam, we get to the final. I think it's done
it's like
by the 1st of August.
Semis, and then final.
Done. So it's a quick round. It's a total of 10 games out of that. If you include all the individual, not even that, individual games. You have 4 in this round. 2, 6, 7 games. That's it.
I did read up that the semifinals, whoever advances, those games would be played in either Houston or Los Angeles. So if Dynamo wins, they get to be playing at home against either Salt Lake City or Tigres, and on the other side you have Tijuana Galaxy. They would either play Cruz Azul or Chicago. But I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on the MLS, which they should go all in for it. Like, hey, this is a new tournament. It's like you're playing in the CONCACAF Champions League, but it's something way smaller. So now go all in for it, and you basically have a shot to say, hey, we're not pushovers. We take.
Oh, I think the MLS is hoping hardcore that 2 out of the 4 that advance are MLS teams.
Yeah.
I think they have confidence in Galaxy, but I think they're hoping that one of these other 3 MLS teams, Dynamo included, can advance and make a good show of it. I would love it on 2 things. A, we can see another game here. I know you would love it because that means Tigres would come back again. We could see a brief rematch. Obviously, the stake's not as high, but a rematch of CONCACAF champions of Tigres back here in Houston again. We all saw the craziness of that game. What's cool about this is that if you're here in Houston, you can watch this. So like I said, July 24th, I know I'll be going out to it. Club America is coming here to play the Dynamo. And what's interesting is that that's literally when Liga MX is starting. So that's the other thing about this is that, MLS actually has a little bit of an advantage in that they're in mid-season basically. All-Star break, I think, was right before that. They're halfway through the games. Mexican League, their focus, I don't think it's going to be this tournament. Like I said, as it should be. It's not some big prestigious thing. But it's a good opportunity if you want to make a flash appearance. I think if you're someone like the Dynamo or someone else and you want to do something that could be significant.
One thing I do see, Dynamo, they're going to be in their season. It might be difficult for them because America lost a few of their players to the tournaments that they have going on, and then we have to play them in something else. So their players are basically fresh, so they can come back and get back into it. So
what's also interesting for the Dynamo, as we'll get here in a second, if the Dynamo are still in the U.S. Open Cup, they will then have 2 tournaments plus a regular season going on at the same time. And as I'll mention in a second, the Dynamo regular season, they're about to hit one of the most brutal stretches, and that is July in terms of number of games played in weeks. So it won't be easy for Dynamo. It'll be interesting to see how manager Wilmer Cabrera can manage his lineups with that. Speaking of other significant games going on, I didn't want to, before we get into Liga MX stuff all the way, I did want to mention that obviously Club America and Tigres are playing each other coming up in July 1st before this tournament for the champion and champions of Mexico there, with each of them winning one of the respective seasons this past year. Winner of that game will go on to play Atlanta in the newly created last year. It was Toronto and Tigres. So since Atlanta won the championship last year, they await the champion of Mexico.
Yeah.
Some would say it's unfair that the U.S. team just sits there waiting.
Longer step
but
just to get there.
Yeah, since they have the longer season. So be interested to see how those games pan out.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. Yep.
So Liga MX, since we last our last show, playoffs happen. These suckers have added another star. They're up to 7 now. So Tigres winning that. I kind of summarized the playoffs in 2 words, and that's no surprise. Whether that's fortunate if you're certain people or unfortunate if you're certain people. When I say no surprise, I said no surprise who was there. It's all the usual favorites. It's all their usual. It's all the usual powerhouses were there. There were no surprises. I think Leon was on a tear. I will give props to Tigres. I was picking Leon not just because I'm anti-Tigres, but I mean, heck, if you look at the numbers, they were rolling through people, and including have the longest active. We had a 12-game win streak going into the playoffs, and so they were truly, the definition of on a roll. So before we get into some changes and whatnot, your thoughts overall on another Liga MX season in the books, another star for your team. Your thoughts on how things ended up at the end of May?
Overall, it was kind of one of those weird playoffs because a lot of teams, including my team, they all basically advanced because of higher seeding. So that's why I was like, I'm not sure why this is happening. Maybe the teams aren't they're not really focused on the playoffs. They're focused on big tournaments coming up or what. But it was kind of interesting. Even my team, that had me nervous. We had to play Rayados in semifinals, and we advanced through higher seeding. So I was happy with that. But then I had to wait for, it was either León or America. And if it was up to me, I would have taken America just because I had seen the season that León was having, which was incredible. But there's this thing that I always believe in, and it's the curse of first place. First place, doesn't matter how good you do. If you end up in first, you're going to lose. You're going to get knocked out. So that's what happened. We won. We got another star. I was happy. And yeah, now I'm looking forward to the new season that's coming up, even though it starts earlier, but I'm looking forward to it.
Do you know, I haven't done, I guess, all the research on it. Well, real quick, since Richard keeps blowing us up here with questions. Going back real fast, the Dynamo and America. Richard, I think it all depends on U.S. Open Cup. I feel like this tournament, for all the teams involved, would be basically the second or third thing in their mind. The Dynamo are going to be exhausted by that point. They're going to be coming off of basically 4 road games in 2 weeks, and potentially getting ready, if they win tomorrow, getting ready for the quarterfinal matchup, probably against FC Dallas that same week. As much as I'm sure they would love to be Club America and go all in, if Wilmer Cabrera puts all his money and starters in for that game and not against FC Dallas in the U.S. Open Cup, then he's an idiot, and I'm going to start agreeing with Raul that it needs to be canned. If it goes well, definitely, we talked a little bit about earlier, I definitely think that if all this goes well, that's the only thing about this tournament. I mean, like I said, it ultimately means nothing, whoever the winner is of this thing. What it really is here's what's going to happen. Everyone's going to watch those games. They're going to go to the games. They're going to make a crap ton of money. And yeah, I think it's just going to prove they're testing the waters. I don't know why, but I think finally the good thing that will come out of this is that it'll create something bigger in off summers, potentially for next summer or the summer after. When it's not a World Cup summer. Yes, I think ultimately this could be the start of a rival. Going back to Copa Libertadores, this could be a rival of that, right? You keep talking about Copa Libertadores being so big, and that's because you got all South America united on that. Well, what if Mexico, here's my thing, Mexico keeps wanting to join that. Well, MLS is getting better. What if MLS and Liga MX just said, screw you guys, in CONMEBOL, we're going to get our own tournament going and be a rival, make a big Champions League, basically. That's bigger than CONCACAF Champions, or bigger than Libertadores. Yeah, it could be a whole other tournament. So
I'm not sure. I can't remember if they did this every 2 years or every year. But I'm pretty sure, depending on how this one goes, they might turn it into an every year thing, which could be pretty interesting because, Dynamo, they play during the summer, but Liga MX, they have 2 back-to-back seasons, and then they take a break during the summer. So.
And Richard, how will Liga MX treat this? I think it's the same thing. I don't think it's going to be the priority. I don't think they're going to take it a priority like the Dynamos. I think it's interesting for them involved, but it's like, it's not what it's about. You're not going to go all out. Why are you going to get one of your guys hurt or do something stupid at the start of the season? These are all, especially Tigres and Club America. I mean, all these teams, they're all people who are vying for playoffs every year.
If anything, it might be a preseason, but to bring in some of the younger guys and be, all right, here's your shot. If you can get far in this tournament that we can probably throw you in the mix for maybe our starting 11 or sit on our bench for our first team. So it's probably like a small preseason, but it just depends on what team it is.
Yeah, it's not like you have legit contending Mexican teams come into town. It's not like we have, Dorados and some Asensio teams, and too soon, for Maradona. I know he's gone from there, but it's not like you have those knuckleheads coming to town. I mean, that they would lay everything out. But that's a good point for someone like Real Salt Lake or someone else who, yeah, they're in the playoffs. Maybe this is a chance for a lesser team like Chicago or even the Dynamo. You could look at it a number of ways. Cruz Azul, Tijuana, to get something to get some momentum.
I did read that whoever wins this, there's prize money after it. I believe it's in the millions. So the MLS team should go after it, because if you could take that money and try and invert it into a player.
Yeah.
Because they're looking for millions. They're not looking for thousands.
Right. So a lot of money to be had here. And I'll tell you right now that game will be sold out. And I'm begging people who are Dynamo fans, please buy the tickets, because I know Richard and all his Club America fans are going to show up, and all his Club America friends and family, and there's going to be 70% of the stadium that's going to be in that god-awful yellow with the red CAs everywhere and those dumb flags waving, and we're going to have to sit here, and there's going to be a few of us Dynamo fans in orange sitting down there, just like it was for Tigres. We're on a little orange island in our own stadium. El Batallon's going to look pathetic just sitting there. Dale, Dynamo. Please come out. I know it's hot July afternoon or evening. It's an evening game. So, come out so we don't have to put up with too much of Richard and his America fans. So, speaking of that, and speaking of America, and speaking of Liga MX, we're about to start a new season. Some big changes on the horizon. The first thing was the whole, what the heck's going to happen with, right, we have our relegation and a promotion. And then there was what I call a curveball thrown into the whole thing. We did have a straight up, relegation. Veracruz, fair and square, is going to be relegated. They don't belong there. They've been perennial losers, forever. And then it was told that Atlético San Luis, who's won both tournaments down in Asensio, they knocked off Dorados. They're the reason Maradona has decided to retire for health reasons, a.k.a. too much of you-know-what in Sinaloa. Yeah. Decided to stop doing that, so we did not get to see Dorados and Maradona in Division 1, which was a dream of mine. But so we have San Luis coming up, which they haven't been. I don't know when the last time or if they've ever been in Division 1.
San Luis, that was 2012, I believe.
What I would also know about this squad is Atlético San Luis is not owned, but it's owned. It's connected to, it's affiliated with Atletico Madrid. Yeah. And I love the system there of them kind of using them as
they're doing so good.
It's a farm team. Money, resources. Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do and what they show up with. Now, the big kicker, our friends that we've loved for so long, and by so long I mean sarcastic, for 2 years, Lobos WAP is no more. Lobos WAP has been bought, sold to the border. What was a second division team, FC Juarez, has absorbed Lobos WAP. They have kept their second division name of FC Juarez, but became a Division 1 team of what Lobos WAP was. So they absorbed Lobos WAP players, Lobos WAP staff. So sorry for those in Pueblo.
I know they wanted to get the name Chiapas back, but that can't happen.
They wanted Chiapas back. That wasn't happening. So instead, we have FC Juarez. We have a border town team that will now be in Division 1. Now, what I found interesting about this is that there's Liga MX still is talking. I know you're not a huge fan of this, but they still keep talking about, because Asensio has been changing their size in the second division. They want to get to 20 teams, is what Liga MX keeps saying, is they want 20 from the 18. And I'd be interested, because one of the things that Asensio's doing is they're limiting themselves, I think, to a smaller number. Yeah. And therefore kicking more teams down to third tier or not even in a tier. It'd be interesting to see, because I know there's people with money in Mexico out there, and I want to see where that money falls. Because if Liga MX opens this up and says, we're going to 20 teams for sure, it ain't going to happen this year. It has to happen over summer. And it didn't happen this summer. I think it won't happen in between an Apertura and Clausura. It has to happen in the summer. I think it'd be interesting to see if they finally pull the plug and say, all right, the highest bidder, give me your team, let's go. And I want to see where those teams come from, because it could be interesting.
I know this season, I believe it goes up to 18 teams, I think.
18, yes.
Yeah. This year it goes up to 18, so I guess that kind of plays a factor into why they're starting it a bit earlier, just because there's going to be more teams and you have to add more games. But I'm not crazy about it, but I guess they know it's going to bring in money, and you get to see some of these old teams that you haven't seen in such a long time come back up to first division. I think that's what they want. But it's going to come down to, because believe it or not, it comes down to money, because there's certain teams that they can actually pay to stay in the first division, just depending on what the situation is. But
well, you remember they talked about how who's actually in danger next year, out of a huge shocker, is Chivas.
yeah,
Chivas, because of the point system and where they've been, Chivas is actually ironic, and that's why. Actually, the best thing that could have if you're a fan of expanding to 20, the best thing that can happen is for Chivas to have another crappy season. Because if Chivas has another crappy season, they're not going to let Chivas go to Division 2. There's too much money.
too much money.
There's too much money there. And so they'll finagle some way. I mean, it was the whole thing with, what was the team that the whole reason, it wasn't Veracruz, or someone got to stay because, I mean, it was Veracruz. Someone got to stay because the other team, because they paid, because the other team didn't meet the Liga MX requirements for their,
like they didn't
their size or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, because they also do it by like certain, like how many people you can fit into a stadium and all that. So it's a lot of stuff, but
so just second division has limited themselves now to 14 teams for the 1920 season. They were bigger at one point, but they're down to 14 teams.
What about the Richard?
And like I said, I would like to see. I said, talk about old teams, Atlante, Celaya. You'd be interested if some of these squads could actually make their way back up.
Bring back Atlante, please.
So, it's interesting.
Like those Chivas, I still hate it to this day that we lost the final to them. But after that, they haven't had a good season since then. There was money involved in that game. And I'm not just saying that because we lost. There was money involved in that game. But, I mean, they're not going to let them go down. Just like they won't let America go down to second division. Why? Because that's what draws people to watch the game. So you have Chivas, Cruz Azul, which Cruz Azul is actually not doing so well. They could be close to Chivas, because they haven't won a championship in, I believe, 29 years, going on 30.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of money involved, but those are the teams that bring attention to like the television and stuff. So yeah, if Chivas doesn't do something this season coming up, then they are one step closer to saying goodbye to first division, and we can bring back Atlante, please, or Dorados. I'll take either.
If I'm reading this right, if I'm counting, we actually have 19 teams. Is this saying there's 19 teams for 2019?
Yo, yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out here, because this has been so confusing, ladies and gentlemen. That's why if you bear with us, I've been trying to keep track of this, because San Luis is the 19th team. I guess my big question is who else was there then?
Well, they brought back Juarez, with Chiapas, and now they brought back San Luis. Because Chiapas, Juarez is basically what they're called, so they're coming up. So
yeah, because there's still an Asensio side, called Chiapas, and that's why I think there were some issues there. I'm just trying to find where. I just want an actual list
of the teams that are coming back.
Give me the 19 teams that I can make sure we are all on the same page here. Give me the 19 teams. Why is this not giving me?
I mean, you have your standard teams that have been up in the first division for the longest, but like Lobos WAP is disappearing. Veracruz should be disappearing, but they're not. And there's always one team that goes down, but now they're adding another team, like just bringing them up. So it'll be pretty interesting.
So yeah, we got some new blood in Liga MX. Same old perennial, I think, favorites. I don't think any of these new sides really mix things up. There'll be some more money going in some of these places. But I think as far as next year goes, I do like the diversity it's creating out, where you're seeing markets in Mexico outside of the capital, outside of the traditional areas. Some of these teams, like I said, developing the border region. Previously you had Tijuana, but you had nothing really on the Texas. Monterrey, Nuevo León was the closest you got. So I think it'd be interesting to see if Juarez can develop a fan base that's big there. I'd love to see some more, teams in the north develop, and it'd be interesting to see what we got.
What a lot of these teams need to do, because the team of the decade is Tigres. Tigres has won 5 championships in the past 10 years. So what a lot of them need to do is they need to stop sticking in Mexico and start branching out South America, Europe. The teams have money. They just rather spend millions on the same players instead of branching out, because Tigres did that. Tigres has gone to South America. They've gone to Europe. And what they're doing now is they're going to Europe. They're going to Europe again, and now we're bringing a Russian to our team. So it's like, you need to start spending money.
Well, a lot of that's why people criticize, I think, Chivas for so long.
Yeah.
Was their Mexico-only, policy, and how it's been like that.
They're still like that, but if you want to win something and win it fair and square, spend money. Chivas has money. They're one of those big teams that everybody pays attention to. Spend the money. I do agree that their fans don't spend money to go and see them, but you have the federation behind you, so go out and do it. Richard, Women's World Cup. We talked about that at the beginning of the video, so yeah.
Back to that one. And I'm just it's me double checking here. So America, Atlas, so Lobos is Juan, Cruz Azul, Chivas, León, Monterrey, Monarcas, Necaxa, Pachuca, Puebla, Querétaro, Santos, Tijuana, Toluca, Tigres. I guess so. All right. Couple other moves. We just as we finish up here and look at Liga MX and move on to our final thing with Dynamo. A lot of moves. Like I said, Tigres making some moves in the market. I think it's interesting to see that Chivas is still a mess. They're trying to make moves, but they keep recycling old guys. They're going back for things they've had before. León, I do like that León's making some moves. They picked up, they got Leo Ramos from Lobos when they saw that they were a sinking ship. They stole him off of there.
They got Ismael Sosa too from Pachuca. I guess they're trying to pick up where they left off. They had an amazing season.
Yeah, definitely León's trying to get there. And a lot of people say, a lot of the critiques is that the problem with León was their lack of depth. They ran out of gas. By the time they ran into that last couple rounds, they were screaming. And by the time they got to Tigres, like I said, Tigres won fair and square, but you could tell each side was pretty gassed, and it was going to be a down of who had the deeper squad. And León's top guys were just gone at that point.
Yeah, they were tired because you had to play 2 games against America, then you got to turn around and you got to play 2 games against Tigres, so you guys are going to be gassed regardless.
Yeah, so I think overall it's going to be interesting to see kind of how this starts off. And by the way, Chile is now up 2-0 with Eduardo Vargas scoring 3 minutes ago at 54. So, great. Real quick. I think the big thing is, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Liga MX kicks off weekend of my birthday, July 19th, 20th, I think that's the first week already, 21st.
Yep.
So we're basically, I'm just under a month away from that. We are, as of right now, if Richard can join us, and I know Richard's comment on this, we're hoping to do July 10th to have a July episode for you, because we'll have both big tournaments to go down, and we will have our official Liga MX breakdown preseason, because by that point we'll be 1 week away from Liga MX kicking off. So we want to have Richard on so we can actually get into it and talk some mess about America as always. So, get into our final thing, get into MLS, and kind of transitioning in. Last thing I wanted to talk about real quick is the Dynamo and the challenge they have ahead in the regular season. And then what's exciting is their defense of the U.S. Open Cup. So, real quick with, really, sorry, Richard, you just have to get me off track here. Don't have what it takes to win the World Cup.
No.
Be quiet, Richard. Wait a minute. Chloe Medica's not even playing in that. So they don't even have a chance. At least we have a chance. And who knows with that. They've changed the format. It's taking place, what now? Is it still December? I thought they changed it.
Yes, it's still December.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll see that. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to Monterrey playing Liverpool. Although that would be a pretty epic.
That'd be a pretty
epic game. I would like to see Monterrey play Liverpool. I mean,
it just depends on who makes it out of Libertadores. You have Libertadores, you have Champions League, you have the CONCACAF Champions League, and I believe you have the teams that are hosting it. So I believe it's Japan that's hosting. Yeah, Japan is hosting it. So they might hopefully Kashima
Antlers hopefully are there. I mean, I think obviously
it'll be a challenge.
Liverpool goes in, as the favorite of that. Let me see.
I hope so. Liverpool deserves it.
I'm just real fast. I'm glad you said that, Richard, because I'm actually just pulling that up right now. 2019 is being hosted. It's in Qatar, so it's being hosted by the same team that's going to be hosted in 2022. Qatar's actually locked it down for the next couple of years of hosting it, and so their top club team will be in it. And let me see if it'll give us anything.
If anything, I believe that Monterrey has a shot. If you have to play a final against Liverpool, they're going to go all in. And
it's going to be Qatar this December 2019. Yep. Qualified teams so far. Liverpool's going to represent UEFA, obviously. Monterrey is representing CONCACAF. Al Assad is from the host. I have no idea how I'm going to say that name, but that's from the OFC, which is Oceania. So this team, I don't even know what New Caledonia is, but apparently it's in Oceania. And then we're waiting on obviously CONMEBOL, so that'll be the winner of Libertadores and the Asian Football Federation and the African Federation. We'll see what happens with there. So there's actually a competition this year for the Asian one to see who actually is in there. Obviously, top favorites are always who comes out of UEFA and CONMEBOL. If like a Boca Juniors or River Plate gets in there, and Liverpool, I think it's pretty much hands off. But I think, Monterrey, can mix it up. So
if they have a shot at third place, I know, because they could do something that America couldn't do.
Whoa, those were shots fired.
Yeah, remember on your 100th year anniversary, you guys lost there, and then you lost to us.
Richard, we may want to take a seat after that one. Okay, with the Dynamo and coming back home real fast, it's been a pretty easy start. They have not lost at home. It's always been ties or wins. So last 3 games, going all the way back, actually back into middle of May, Dynamo had a win. Last time they had a win over DC United 2-1. They had a loss on the road to Minnesota 1-0. And they had a tie at home 1-1. Richard and I were at that game against Sporting KC. They, since then, had a long break with their national stuff. They also had last week we had the round 4 of the U.S. Open Cup, which they narrowly got by the Austin Bold in the second half, 3-2. Regular season-wise, here's where the brutal marathon starts. On the 22nd, they go on the road to Portland. On the 26th, they go on the road to San Jose. On the 29th, they go on the road to New England. And this is all after tomorrow when they play in the round of 16 elimination, of course, instant elimination, here at home against Minnesota, defending their U.S. Open Cup title. By the way, those are just the next 3 games. They then come home finally on July 3rd against the Red Bulls, and then go on the road after that point over the next 2 weeks. They have 4 more games over the next 2 weeks. Only July 12th at home against LAFC. The other 3 out of 4 are on the road. This is a brutal time for the Dynamo. This is going to be crunch time. As I was telling Dro, I look at how can you come out of these stretches. For me, looking at these 3 games in June, and really including the rest of June, if you can come out, they have not been good on the road so far. You got to turn that around. My optimistic goal would be come out with 6 points, with 2 wins and a loss. My minimum goal would be come out like they did the last run, which is 4 points with a win, tie, and a loss. They cannot afford to go any less than that because they put themselves in a hole. They've been pretty solid, and they're staying with the pack. The one advantage they have over the rest of the West right now is them and Portland have played the least amount of games. They've only played 13 games, and they're sitting in 4th place with only 13 games. Put that in perspective, FC Dallas is 2 points behind us in 5th, and they've played 4 more games than the Dynamo have. Minnesota has played 3 more games, and they're 3 points behind us. So the fact that Dynamo is sitting in 4th place, middle of playoff contention, 24 points, with only 13 games played, they're doing good. But here's the real test. Same thing for the month of July. You got 2 home games, 5 road games. My goal in that is that you come out. My goal would be to come out with 9 to 10 points out of that. That's 3 wins, a tie, and a loss, or 3 wins, 2 losses. But I think it's doable. You got to continue to defend that home field. That's one thing that's happening this year that they gave up last year. They are finally winning and tying at home, but you got some tough opponents. Red Bulls won't be easy, and we sure as hell know LAFC on Friday night on July 12th ain't going to be easy either. And by the way, the road game before that, I believe, or one of the road games before that, is against the Galaxy. So you're playing the top 2 teams in the West. You'll then turn around and play Seattle as well. So it's you're playing all 3 teams in front of you. New York Red Bulls is 5th in the East, so you're playing all the good things. On the positive side, they've been beating good teams. I mean, we beat Montreal this year. We beat DC United. They're number 2, number 3 in the East. We saw the FC Dallas game already. I'm hoping we get a rematch with them in the U.S. Open. So with the U.S. Open, we play tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, Minnesota. We're down to pretty much all MLS teams at this point. FC Dallas plays one of the few non-MLS teams, New Mexico United. We're all assuming FC Dallas is going to beat them. So based off the bracket, the winner of that game plays the winner of our game in the round of 8 quarterfinals, which we actually get a break and take place around July 10th. Which, like I said, once again, this is getting to all these other games going on. If that happens, we play July 10th. We have our regular game July 12th. We have 2 more road games. We have that game against Club America on July 24th. If we win that July 10th game, we play again the week after that July 24th, the July 30th or whatever. So it's brutal. It's brutal. It's nonstop. So it is going to be a delicate path to managing. I know you're not a fan of it. I don't think that he has the ability to. And I will acknowledge, I think that it was scary what we saw the other night. You were there with me at the game against Austin. But we come out relatively slow, but cruising 3-0 halftime. We were playing only 2 starters out of our entire 11. Only 2 starters, including the goalie being a backup. Only 2 starters, cruising 3-0. And then all of a sudden we come out after no lineup changes, and all of a sudden we're a different team. And we let them back in. They were on their heels the entire time. Heck, Austin could have tied that game, and they probably should have. But by some sort of luck, we got out of that. I don't know. So what's your things? How confident are you going into tomorrow against an actual MLS opponent? By the way, an MLS opponent that beat us a little less than not even a month ago, granted in their house. But this is a rematch of last year. We knocked out Minnesota at the same round, so they're going to be wanting revenge. It was here at BBVA. So what is your outlook for tomorrow going forward for them defending the cup?
Can they do it? Yes, but it just depends, because during that season game, that was the 11 that you start. He's not going to be able to do that because you're missing guys due to national team business that they have to take care of. So can they do it? Yes. But if they have to take care of the lead that they get, They gave up that lead. If you have a lead going in 3-0, take out your offense and throw in some defense, because you have to secure your defense, because that's the problem that they had. Percentage of the ball second half was 95 Austin, 5 Dynamo.
I think the midfield was the weak point. I mean, thank God for the likes. I never thought I'd say this because I've always been one of his biggest haters. Kevin Garcia and some of those other guys on the back line, though some of the plays he made saved our butt. And even though he's a woman beater, Tyler Derrick, our backup goalie, had some crazy good saves without Joe Willis in there. But where the hell is the midfield? And that had one of our starters, Martinez. I'm sorry, he scored a goal, but he is increasingly getting on my bad list for he has limited offense. He'll show you flashes, but the guy has zero defense. I mean, just bad.
He doesn't know how to control the ball on the offense either. He always has his back turned to the goal that he's scoring in. Like, stop that. You try to turn so fast, but you already have 2 defenders behind your back. You can't do that.
It was nice to see Matthias Vera, the other starter in the lineup. So both starters scored. It was nice to see him. But once again, he seemed floundering at times. Now, yes, I get that they didn't have their usual front guys who dominate the ball as much. But you're a midfielder in Major League Soccer. You're supposed to, you're supposed to control the ball. You can't rely on. You're not going to have your 2 Hondurans. You're not going to have Motto all the time. One bright sign I'll say was a good thing to see him finally play again, but he was playing out of position, and that was Juan David Cabezas.
Yeah.
He's been out since last season. Mystery behind all this stuff. I suspect it's a knee thing. He was in full action, midfield. I think he should be playing defense. That's where he belongs.
A lot of those guys that they called up, a lot of them they're good. So what he needs to do, he needs to position everybody in the positions that they know how to play. Because a lot of those young guys, they gave up the goals in the second half. But a lot of those guys that got subbed in, they were hungry. They wanted to play. They were there to play.
Ronaldo Pena finally got a start. He's the other forward, looked good. The guy they called up, like I said, I think he was a little too eager. But Michael Salazar, who they called up for Rio Grande Valley, they just called up. He was a little eager. He had some opportunities, but you could tell he was raw. He was rookie, a lot of energy. But there's something there, some talent, good size, good speed.
I think they can feed off of last game, use that, and then they're going to bring more energy into the second game.
I really would like to see them come out attacking a little bit first. Bonia Garcia got put in later. He's a player for me, especially at his age, that it takes a while for him to get going. So he's better as a starter. I don't like Bonia Garcia as a sub. And you could tell it took him a while to get going for the Dynamo in that midfield. Once again, you're relying on old hats, old DMB, DeMarcus Beasley. I love you, brother, but you're old. And there's a reason you announced your retirement. The fact that we were practically, no offense, I'm not trying to be rude, but they were practically carting him out on the field.
Yeah.
The fact that he went down so fast, I get you were short on personnel, Cabrera, but you cannot, Beasley needs to sit. He needs to sit. I would have rather you put Cabezas on the back line, but once again, he was short in the midfield. I get it, you're short in the midfield. They also don't have Kiki Strunier right now with him playing on the Slovenian team in qualifiers. They will get him back very soon, though. They will not get Kyoto or Elise back until Honduras gets knocked out. So that's what if you want a reason to root for El Salvador so we get those 2 back. But then again, we have Darwin Seren, who has not been a huge role. He's someone we missed in the midfield. Someone we didn't see a lot of either was Memo Rodriguez, who I think needs to get back in that forward position. I much would rather have seen him with Pena mixing someone else up top or put him in the midfield. The fact that I saw Tommy Boy McNamara up there in forward, I should not see Tommy McNamara at forward. Sorry, Tommy Boy, but this is not your position. So we'll see tomorrow night. We plan on going out there. I'll be out there live watching that game at 6 o'clock. It should be televised. Hopefully it is. If you're wanting something to do tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, BBVA, there's always cheap seats for these games just because it's not highly attended because it's a weeknight.
I believe they said that they were selling tickets for $7 each.
Yeah. So you can get general admission in there, even lower bowl, because there's not as much going on if you want to check that out. So a lot of soccer going on, a lot of soccer being played. Our goal, and we went a little long tonight because we hadn't come on in a long time. If you're watching this on playback, like I said, if you're looking for World Cup stuff, Women's World Cup, that was the first segment. We then talked about a lot of the Champions League, Copa America Gold Cup. We didn't talk about Champions League, although we are both very happy that Liverpool won. We talked a lot about Liga MX and what's going on with them in the MLS, and we just concluded with the Dynamo and specifically how they're doing. So we hope you join us next time. We're looking at July 10th. We will not have as long of a break as we did this time. Yeah. We just were super busy. We will have shows for you July 10th. We'll have shows for you in early August. The next 2 months, they'll be coming at you. We'll hopefully have some more content up on the Texas Soccer Live Facebook page, and we'll go from there. We'll see what's up. I hope to maybe on the July 10th show, I might have some extra tickets for that Club America game. So maybe I can throw the Dynamo Club America. So if you're, I'm going to say if you're a Dynamo fan, but even if you're a Club America fan, maybe I'll let you win a couple of tickets to that. And then if the Dynamo can advance tomorrow, we might have some tickets to their July round of 8 game that'll be sometime in mid-July. So a lot of stuff going on. We'll be hearing a lot of stuff from Raul. Raul's going to be traveling and going to a lot of stuff for Tigres out in California in July and seeing them play Club America there and several other games. So we're looking forward to that. So once again, hit us up on Facebook, like and share the video, and like I said, comment, tell us what other topics you want. There is so much to talk about with soccer. So if you guys are saying we want a show that's more just MLS, we want to talk just international, we want to talk, think about what you want to hear about coming up, because before you know it, in a couple months, we're going to have all the domestic leagues around the world are going to start back up again. So do you want to hear more about Premier League? Do you want Bundesliga? Do you want Serie A? What do you want to hear more about? And what stuff? Because we can't cover everything. It's impossible. Yeah. Okay? So just tell us if you want to hear more about the local stuff, you want the international, you want to keep it a mix, talk to us. Anyways, for Texas Soccer Live, I'm Sean Telez. That's Raul Villarreal. We appreciate y'all tuning in. And until next time, later.
I'll see you in Cali, Richard.
Going back to Cali.